Hello and welcome to Mindset Kitchen. My name is Diana Paliokaiti and I have a wonderful guest with me today. Her name is Felicity Ashley. She's a mother, marketer, marinator, and motivator. I would say a force to be reckoned with. Felicity was a part of Mothership crew in the world's toughest race. Hello, Felicity, and welcome to Mindset Kitchen.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Felicity, I did a little introduction. It's a little tiny snapshot of what you actually do and what you are in your past. Could you tell me a little bit more, please?
My background really is in marketing. So I spent best part of 25 years working in corporate organizations, leading marketing teams. And it was towards the end of that time that I had something of a midlife crisis and decided to take on the world's toughest row, which is a rowing race from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean, which is 3,000 miles. And I did that as part of a crew of four working women called the Mothership. One of my sister was one of the other women in the crew. And that was, as you can imagine, an incredible experience. And when I returned from that, went back to work and was then diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer, which sent me headlong into another challenge of a very different nature. And I then went through treatment for the cancer, so surgery and 3 months of chemotherapy, came out the other side and went back to work to a corporate restructure. And it was that really which was the catalyst for change, for doing something a bit different. And it was over the course of the next few weeks, next couple of months, that I had lots of different conversations about what next. And the subject of talking about my experiences kept coming up. And you can only have those conversations so many times before the seed is planted and the penny drops. And so it was at that point that the idea of professional speaking came up, because so many people said, my story is so inspiring and you should talk to people about it. And so that's what I do now. So I've set myself up as a professional speaker, sharing my experiences really over the last few years and how the lessons that I've learned relate to workplace challenges. So I talk to organizations about things like overcoming adversity and how you achieve big challenging goals through the power of mindset and well-being and teamwork.
Thank you. That's a really nice summary, Felicity. I must say, when I read your messages, I was wowed. And I know some of it will come out during the conversation, especially when I read your first message.
Yeah.
But before that, I asked Felicity what she would like me to cook for her. And I think it came out as you allowing me the freedom. You didn't want to be difficult. I think that's how I read it, because Felicity didn't really give me anything. She just said, cook anything. She would love her passion for cooking to reignite it. She has three kids, so obviously it's a lot involved. Food planning, it's a lot of food as well, and it's quite hard to keep cooking and cooking, and you get bored eventually and all end up using the same recipes, the same meals. And that's even I do that. Although I cook all of this, I still end up recycling the same recipes because they're quick, they're tasty, and everyone loves them. So I was a little bit challenged because I didn't have a single ingredient to choose, and I wanted to choose something that Felicity can do it on, not just occasionally, but maybe on a weekday dinner for everyone, and something I think quite delicious and nourishing, and at the same time simple and quite fast to do. So the recipe is chicken francese. It's I actually was thinking as well that the chicken breasts need to cut kind of like into half and opened up to cook, so they cook all equally, and it kind of like a meal that goes along, like further along, because you can buy maybe 4 breasts and split it, and then put more greens and so on, so you can actually save a little bit rather than everyone gets a breast each, because it's expensive, right? So chicken francese, it is made with kind of almost thick, kind of maple syrup thickness, lemony sauce with mashed potatoes. And I was explaining earlier, Felicity, we don't have to always eat with mashed potato. You can have a sourdough bread, you can have rice, you can have chips, anything you fancy. Actually, it goes with pretty much anything. So hope you enjoy. I will read your first message and I'll slowly start kicking off and preparing the chicken breast, and I'll explain along the way what's going on. And then don't worry, I'll send you the recipe after. So if you do like it, we can, talk afterwards about it.
and I'll tell you what my kids think of it as well.
I would love that. If they say, yes, mom, this is the meal I want you to cook every week, I'll be like, yes, result. Okay, so your first message is embrace your superpower. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I really truly believe that we each have something unique within ourselves that is something of a superpower. It's our USP, if you like, and it's what makes us who we are. And I think if you can learn to understand what your superpower is, then it's something that you can use to kind of help get you through challenges, help you achieve goals, all sorts of things. It's such a powerful thing to kind of acknowledge and recognize. Obviously, the trick is in recognizing it. And if I can tell you the story of how I came to appreciate my superpower, after my eldest son, Sam, was born, I started to get some hip pain, and it was kind of intermittent, but it was severe. And it was the kind of hip pain that would literally stop me in my tracks when I was moving around. And as you will know, if you're trying to chase a toddler around a car park, it's not very convenient. So after about 3 years of being, moved from medical pillar to post and endless physiotherapy appointments, I eventually went to see a hip consultant who scanned it and basically told me that it was 100% screwed. He didn't mince his words. And he said that 99% of people with a hip in my condition couldn't even walk. But at the time, I was able to run for up to an hour. Um, and I really remember driving away from the hospital appointment that day with a feeling that I can really only describe as elation. And I thought at the time that's a really strange reaction when somebody tells you you need a hip replacement. And I realized that it was because I'd interpreted, when he said to me that most people can't walk, yet you can still run, I'd interpreted that as I'm nails. I'm, tougher than most people and I can kind of get through anything. And I think it was hearing it from somebody else, but the way I had interpreted it. And that is something that I've come to draw on. So my superpower is I'm nails, and I know I'm capable maybe physically of things that other people maybe aren't. And it's definitely something that I've drawn upon to help me get through challenges. It's really what gave me the confidence to say yes to taking on the Atlantic Row. And again, it's something that I drew upon to help me get through my cancer diagnosis. It was that knowledge that I'm nails and I can do it.
And where do you think that's coming from, Felicity?
I really don't know. I've thought about it quite a lot. I'm quite small in terms of physicality. I wonder whether it's small person trying to almost overcome that size difference. I'm the middle one of three children. I've got an older brother and a younger sister. I suspect there's an element of sibling rivalry, sibling competitiveness coming in. So we each want to kind of try and outdo the other one. It probably comes from all sorts of places. But yeah, for some reason it's there.
Yeah. And you said it's obviously not easy to find your superpower because it needs to almost like click, just make sense, right? And
Yeah.
and then you embracing it even further.
Yeah.
Because I think being aware of your superpower allows you to challenge yourself, grow further.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I think when I'm thinking, as you were talking about, I'm thinking, I think the I could be nails as well. I was like, I could be nails, but I will not take that because I love that. It's so you. If I see you, I'm like think nails.
Yeah.
So I will not take that. But it's something about being quite mentally tough as well. And I know it's because of all my life challenges has made me so tough. It's almost like I had all this intensive training, which, like I've been thrown in the deep end so many times, and I came out, and I came out, and I came out stronger. And I think that toughness, I think my superpower as well. And what I do with it now, I challenge myself on purpose. Like I ran 10K this morning, but I don't normally run 10K. I just like thought, come on, you're tough, it's all in your head at the end of the day, right? So if people did find their superpower, which could be simplest things, perhaps being extremely kind and caring,
Absolutely.
and you could go and be, finding actually the sector you want to work in because you have that in you. You're really empathetic, and little things like that can make you excel in what you do if you follow your superpower. I just thought of that is pretty powerful.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you can then look back on experiences earlier on in your life and recognize that. So it's not something necessarily that you just become. You can see it as a seed that's kind of weaving its way throughout life. But once you recognize it And then I think giving it a label really helps as well, because that makes it just more tangible, and you remember it more easily. I think that really helps. Yeah. So it's just an incredibly powerful tool, I suppose, that I now use.
Yeah, and I guess being brave to talk about it, I've got a superpower. It's another thing. It's voicing it. So people know, well, I'm going to call Felicity. She's got the superpower. She will know what to do because I'm slightly lost, for example, right? Being known, your superpowers are known to others. I think it's also another nice way of sharing it as well.
Yeah.
Because if we keep it and think, oh, I've got superpower, but I don't want anyone to know because they'll think I'm, wow, who I am, like I've got superpower. But I think we all have superpowers. Certain physical and mental, right? And it doesn't have to just be someone extraordinary. We can all start looking into it and finding our superpowers and making the most of it.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's got something. Everyone's got a particular quality that they excel at, that they can use. And I do think it helps to hear it from somebody else. Although the surgeon, he didn't say your nails, that was my interpretation. And in my mind, I heard it from him. And so I think it can help to bring it out if you discuss it with friends, family, whoever it might be work colleagues. But it can help because sometimes it's easy for other people to identify that strength in you. Because again, most of us are naturally quite modest, and you don't want to voice it. But other people are more than happy to do that for you.
I completely agree that you just literally hit the nail because sometimes I would not think it's a superpower because it comes so natural to you.
Yeah.
But and you don't want to compare yourself. But if someone else will confirm, wow, that's amazing, that's impressive, and then as you say, it comes from someone else, you get that affirmation that it actually not everyone may have this particular superpower. So, and I get similar things. If let's say my mentor would say, you are incredible what you've done, like this is not easy thing to do and you've done, I'm like, oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought,
Everyone does it.
yeah, like no, like this is not a simple thing to do. And then you take it on board and you feel a bit more kind of proud and you feel more aware of it. And then you ask someone else, and this is what I've done, and they're like, oh wow, yes. So then it allows you to kind of embed it and really make it actual superpower rather than it just in your head.
Yeah, and use it as fuel. Yeah.
And where do you use your superpower? Can I ask?
I suppose I use it in all sorts of ways, but primarily, possibly, it's about self-confidence, and it's about that self-belief that I can do things that maybe feel like massive challenges, but I think, no, I'm nails, I can do that. So as I said, it was definitely a factor in me agreeing to take on the Atlantic Row. And then I think it was a factor in getting through my cancer diagnosis as well, and the treatment. Because as you know, that can be brutal, it can be horrible. But in the back of my head, I thought, no, I'm nails, I can do this. I'm not going to let it get me down, and I'm going to keep going and keep exercising as much as I possibly can, because I know that I can do this. So I think it can be used in so many different ways.
And how soon did you do the race after your hip replacement?
I was about 3 or 4 months into my rehab after my hip replacement when I agreed to do it, and that's when we pretty much started training. So I was back into exercising anyway as part of my rehab, and then we got into kind of more or less full training for the row, and then it was about 18 months. So it's probably just over 2 years after my hip replacement that we set off for the row itself. Yeah.
Wow, that's
So not very long, really.
not very long at all. That's very impressive. And are there any other plans for anything else so tough?
Well, there are no firm plans, but there are dreams. Dreams become goals when you put a timeline on them, and there aren't any firm timelines yet. I think I probably need to get maybe another year of being cancer-free under my belt before I fully commit to something else. But I would love to think there's another challenge in me at some point. I honestly loved every single second of it, and I would love to do something like that again. Yeah.
Well, we shall look forward to something. Watch this space.
Watch this space, absolutely.
And I agree with you, Felicity. I think having that superpower takes you through challenges in a much more committed and strong way. So if you going through chemotherapy, it's extremely difficult and it affects everyone mentally. But believing that this is given to you and it's up to me how I will react to it, how I will live through it, and I think it's a true gift to have.
Yeah.
So keep sharing to the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about it's up to us how we choose to respond to those things. It's that whole, the word responsibility. We have the ability to choose how we respond, and definitely it helps you to make those choices.
I've made a choice for chicken francese. Let's see how it goes.
I'm looking forward to it.
So what I'm going to do is put some flour on the chicken breast and just fry it on the pan, and then I'll set them aside, and then I'll fry some lemons. So if you see me doing, I am just lightly frying everything to get all the flavor and color. So if you imagine you're cooking this for your boys, you got three boys?
2 boys and a girl.
Two boys.
Boy, girl.
Okay, so if you're cooking for your children, you'll be doing really fast.
Whilst doing a number of other things.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to put some olive oil. This is frying olive oil, so not extra virgin. Got stuck. And just brown it so it has a really nice color. We'll wait for the pan to heat up a little bit.
And you fry it with a lemon as well?
No, so then the lemon goes, take the chicken out, and then I use the same chicken juice, fry the lemon until it gets quite caramelized, like almost like a charcoal. It can go a little bit blackened as well. It's okay because you're not really actually end up eating it. It's for the flavor. And I actually thought it was going to be quite lemony, but it wasn't at all. It was just the subtleness and lightness, and it just really balanced out, and it didn't need too many other flavors in there. Okay, so before I start making all the frying noises, I'll read the second message. The power of reframing. Love this, but I want to know your story behind it.
Yeah, I mean, reframing is one of those, I suppose, typical mindset techniques. And my experience over the last few years, and actually when I look back on life, throughout life, I've always used it, but I think I've used it subconsciously. I don't think I was aware that I was reframing, so to speak. But I've had quite a lot of time to reflect on why I've reacted to different situations in the way that I've had, and why I've kind of come through it in the way I have. And I realize now that I've been reframing throughout. And again, I'll share my story, and there's a couple of good examples. When the idea of the row came about, it was actually my sister that suggested it, and she called me and she said, "I've got a boat. Do you want to row the Atlantic?" And I mean, it's quite a mad thing to ask anybody. Yeah. And I said, "Don't be ridiculous. I've just had a hip replacement. The kids are too young. I can't leave them for that long." All of these kind of what I thought were socially acceptable responses to such a crazy idea. And she's an executive coach, and I think she pulled this particular phrase right out of her toolkit. But she said, "Stop giving me reasons why you can't, and start giving me reasons why you can." She can be pretty persuasive. You might even call her a little bit bossy, but it was such a simple thing to say, and it really made me think. And when I put down the phone, I was literally grinning from ear to ear, and I had this kind of fire growing in my tummy because I just knew I was going to say yes. I just had to convince my husband of this slightly bonkers plan in the meantime. Fortunately, he didn't take long to persuade. But I realised that, having had a hip replacement wasn't an excuse to say no. It had given me this new lease of life. I was able to exercise without pain again. And my consultant had said, you can pretty much go on and do anything. So I thought, well, actually, I can do it now. There's no way I could have done it before the hip replacement, but it had literally given me this new lease of life. And it was my reason to actually say yes and say that I could do it. And so I'd really turned what was objectively a very challenging situation, a negative situation, into a positive, and I turned this, what could have been seen as a can't or a blocker, into my reason to say yes, into my can. And I think it's so easy to literally add that one little word to a phrase, instead of I can't do it yet. And that completely reframes that expression. And it's so easy to jump to that answer that I just can't do it. If you're faced with a challenge, I just can't do it. But actually, I can't do it yet. But you can find ways of getting through it and making sure that you can get there. And that has become something that, again, I've used so much over the course of life. Just finding reasons that you can do something rather than falling back on the, many potentially valid reasons why you can't. And then a second example then from my sort of cancer story was, I had this cancer diagnosis literally just weeks after completing the world's toughest row. I was physically fitter and stronger than I'd ever been in my life. And I think at that point, a lot of people would have thought, why me? But again, using that reframing, because I was so fit and strong and in cancer terms relatively young, instead of thinking, why me, I actually thought, why not me? Um, and that completely changed my perspective on it as a challenge. I thought, I'm better placed than almost anyone else I know to get through this because of my age and because I'm fit and strong. And that then set the tone for how I approached all of the treatment, and I think helped me physically and mentally. And it's just such an easy thing to do, to reframe those challenges as opportunities or negatives as positives, and something that any of us can do just with those, little change in techniques or adding a little word here and there to negative phrases.
Yes, Felicity, it's one of my favorite things to do as well. And when you said at the beginning, it's something that I have been experiencing for quite a few years now. Where you said, I think subconsciously, maybe not consciously, whereas now you're doing it consciously because you're aware this has it. You're aware you got that other power. I think it's another superpower to be able to reframe and stick to it and to believe that the reframing will really get you through to a better place. Because I was looking over the past maybe 5 years. I've been evaluating, why do I react to things the way I'm reacting? What is it? And I realized I probably all my life subconsciously was reframing it already. And I don't know where it comes from. And maybe perhaps sometimes you get tired of feeling certain way or experiencing certain things, and your brain seeks some positivity. And I think that's perhaps where it came for me when in my childhood, all the difficult things I've experienced, I felt like, oh, just tired of this. And I would start dreaming and imagining things. And then I would say, well, this is so, I feel good because I'm dreaming I am not in this situation. And then somehow I would be okay next day. But that's again gone for 15 years, maybe, me doing it subconsciously. And now I do everything consciously, that reframing. And when I went for my run on Monday, first time, for example, where I did 10K as well, it was my first ever 10K because I usually run loads of fives. I enjoy half an hour run, I come back. Something in me was saying, no, do a bit more. And then when I hit around 6 kilometers, I was like, oh, this is just hard. I'm really struggling now. I say, no, you're not struggling. You just think you're struggling because your body is telling you it's getting tired, but you know you can do more. So keep running. Another 5 is a punishment. So now you're going to have to run 10. And I ran 10 and I was like, that's all it took. That little reframing from being, oh, this is hard, for no, you can do this. Yeah. You can do 10K, show yourself. Yeah. And I felt amazing afterwards. And I think, as you say, you can reframe so many situations. Yeah. And when people probably think, well, what is it going to do to me? It's actually going to change so many things in your brain. So it's a neuroplasticity aspect in there involved as well. The more you do, the more you become really positive person. You see challenge and you think, right, what is it in me? What is it in the challenge that it's going to give me? And you approach it in such a way that it's almost like does not affect you internally too much, doesn't give you those traumas that would give you otherwise.
Yeah, it's about having a growth mindset, isn't it? It's about what positives can I find in this situation? What's it going to teach me? And it may be a horrible situation to get through, but there are things that I can learn from it and ways that I can grow through it. Yeah, and talking about exercise, I always think no pain, no gain. And, we hear it a lot, but it's actually so true. It's when it starts to hurt and you're finding it hard, that's when it's making you fitter and stronger. And that's what I've always told myself. I remember, running a lot, and it was, those last, I don't know, the last mile or so was so hard. And it was at that point I think, no, this is where it's really working. This is where I really need to push through, because this is what's making the difference. And again, it's reframing. You just don't realize you're doing it at the time.
It's incredible, isn't it? We're so alike in so many things, right? Yeah. But you can see how helpful it is and how you become that super woman in itself, because you living that way. And it's almost like takes away lots of fears, because you're going to well, I'll just approach it that way. I'm not just going to do it because every problem has a solution, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's glass half full, not glass half empty approach. And I think it's, I mean, I suppose if you're too far down the optimism route, then it could potentially get a bit grating for people around you. But generally, I think it's helpful for other people to hear positivity because it helps them change their mindset as well. You know, very negative people can be quite draining, can't they? Energy zappers. Whereas actually, if you are generally an optimistic, positive person, then it's quite infectious.
Exactly. And I think that's why when people say, well, you can't change the world, but I think if you can change yourself, the world naturally will slowly change as well because your positivity will lead to so many nice things and so you will attract nice things and then you will create this group of people who are also positive and so it goes on and on. The world is changing. The world, is becoming a better place.
Yeah.
So I really believe in that. If you can change yourself to be the person you're proud of, the person who can do these things and take on challenges without sabotaging yourself, then everyone else will benefit as well. Like your family, probably your children will grow up looking up to you.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, Emma Henderson, has a lovely expression. She says, it's not about changing the world, but it's about changing the little corner of the world that you inhabit. And that's exactly right. It's about influencing those people around you. And it's that ripple effect of the actions that you have and the kind of the attitude that you have and the energy that you give that will affect the people around you and then the people around them.
And I believe also when you said about your cancer journey as well, that reframing perhaps did loads of help for you to actually heal and be cancer free. Because I guess you will never know, but if we put the benefit and all of the reframing and the positivity, I think I believe, and I've read a lot about it. If you're positive and you believe that you're going to get better, it's a lot to do, not just with the drugs you receive, but also with your mindset.
There's so much in that mind body connection, isn't there? I've recently read a book called The Expectation Effect.
Oh yes, I read it.
Yeah, and exactly, it's all about how if you think something, you can't think yourself thin or something like that. That's a bit ridiculous. But if you believe things are going to work out well, then it just helps that process.
Exactly, and the same. I've read that book, absolutely loved it, and I proceeded to read other books as well along the lines of that. So I'm right into that as well. And you know what? If I'm thinking this meal will go bad and it's not going to work out, I'm just going to reframe because Felicity doesn't know what it's supposed to be anyway. So you know what? If it doesn't go well, she will think this is meant to be like that, and she will not say anything because she's really polite. So, and I know that, so I'm safe here. The positivity is spilling out of me about this meal.
Well, it's smelling pretty good so far. It looks good.
So I fried. You can see there's no breadcrumbs or anything. It's just flour and I dipped in egg. It was simple egg with a teaspoon of milk, and salt and pepper, and flour, and I just lightly fried the fillet. And now the lemons are done. I'm just going to wipe the pan so all this kind of black stuff doesn't really come out in the sauce. But you can use another pan if you like, but I prefer just to wipe it away, and it's fine. So, Felicity, if you are happy to move on to your last message. Yeah. Right. So, I'd love to hear what's the meaning and thought behind this, because I actually been on a podcast Focus on Why quite recently as well, and it knowing that I'm going on that podcast really made me think and reflect. So, I'm really curious to see this one. So, the third message is understanding your why.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, if anyone's familiar with the work of Simon Sinek, then they'll know what he means by understanding your why. But it's really about understanding your motivation for doing things, whether it's achieving a big goal or getting through some other kind of challenge. It's not it's not really about getting to the finish. So if I think about the row, it's not getting about getting to the finishing line because that's the goal, but it's about why you need to get there. And I think if you can understand your why, your motivation, or maybe you might even call it your purpose, then it really helps when you're facing difficult situations because it's literally your reason to pick yourself back up when something's knocked you down or when something's hard for getting through and kind of finding that silver lining. And you can apply it to so many different situations, whether you're at work and you've been given this massive target. If you don't know why you need to achieve it, it's really hard to keep going. I mean, it seems like a pointless exercise. And, in a work situation, it's not just about achieving that target, it's about why. What's that going to give you? What's that going to do for you personally? So it's about sort of almost separating the goal from this motivation that's driving you internally to keep going. Um, and, as a mum, our children were our motivation for taking on the row. We wanted to inspire them to dream big and to show them that with the right mindset and, yes, with a lot of hard work, ordinary people like their mummies can achieve extraordinary things. And there were so many hard times, both during the training for the row and then the 3,000 miles of the row itself, where it would have been so easy just to throw our hands in the air and say, it's just too difficult, we can't do this. But what kind of example would that have been setting for our children? We wanted to inspire them and show them that you can do anything you set your mind to. And that was a tremendous driver to keep us going, to get us through umpteen different challenges along the way and make sure that we did get to the start line. And then once at the start line, to get through the challenges of the row itself and then get to Antigua at the end. And again, they were my inspiration and my motivation, my reason for getting through the cancer treatment. Because I think when I was diagnosed, they were 4, 7 and 9. So they were small. And, as a mum, your instinct is to protect them, or as any parent, your instinct is to protect them. And I wanted to see them grow up and have their own amazing adventures, but I didn't want them to grow up without their mum. So that was a reason for me literally to get out of bed every day and to fight this thing, if you want to call it fighting it, and to keep as physically fit and strong as I could be for them, really, to make sure that I came out the other side of it. And, we got to stay as a family. I just don't think you can underestimate the power of having that motivation to keep you going, to keep you on that path, even if the path deviates a bit, to keep you going.
I've got goosebumps. So I knew it's definitely talking to my heart, because something came up to me, because the why is always, it's not so many, there are so many whys, but your whys are all really heart touching and really deep into your soul, the meaning of why you're here and who needs you and so on. So they're all very kind of selfless whys, but I think because they are touching your heart, I think they're really powerful.
Yeah.
So understanding your why is not necessary. I don't know, what something comes up to me like, well, I need to make money because I want to buy a house. This could be a really good why as well. But I always think, if it's not attached to your heart, will you actually keep going? Will you not give up? Because you still have a house, perhaps you just dream of a bigger house, for example. And it could be why as well, could be. But for me, I think personally, it would have to be something so that my heart would be beaming with that why. And I think that's what gets you through more, rather than be external, materialistic, or something that is not necessarily touching your heart. I don't know. Just this came up to me because all your whys are really to do with love and the feeling of living and wanting to be here. And I was thinking about Mindset Kitchen as well, and why I'm doing it, and why it was born originally, and what would keep me going. And every time I hear feedback from people, or someone said, wow, Diana, I watched this is incredible, actually it really helped me already, it touches my heart right away, and I'm like, that's exactly why I'm doing it. I'm creating that ripple effect, inviting people like yourself to share that, and hopefully people can relate and create their own whys and find their own whys for doing certain things, for living certain way, because everything becomes more meaningful.
Yeah, I think it's about finding the thing that ignites that passion in you and that makes your eyes light up. And after I left my corporate role, I had some coaching, and my story came up in that, and my coach said to me, "You just light up when you talk about it." And at that point, I was thinking I would go back into another corporate role, and I realised actually that wasn't igniting my previous roles really weren't igniting my passion, and the row juxtapositioned with the cancer had given me a new purpose, a new why, and it was about making a difference. And I think it's finding the thing that you can do to make a difference to whoever it might be that's important to you. And so for me, you know, my purpose has changed a little bit through these two very different but very life-changing experiences. And it's to help other people through sharing my story, whether that's through inspiring other people like me, showing them that ordinary people really can do extraordinary things, because I think that gives a lot of inverted commas normal people a lot of confidence, but also showing people that something like a cancer diagnosis doesn't have to stop you living life. You know, almost whatever the prognosis, there is still life to be lived, and you can go on and live your hopes and dreams in other ways. And I think that's really given me a totally new lease of life going forward, and that's something that I do feel really passionate about now.
And I can relate. I guess I did not have cancer. My husband did, but I feel like I've been giving a new lease of life because you you see how fragile lives are and that you may not be here next day. And for me to now live that life, I need to live the best way I can in inflicting the light onto everyone. And I think that's how I can perhaps say thank you and to this opportunity to live and be appreciative as well. And I'm thinking when you perhaps heard the diagnosis, and I'm thinking of your messages, you pretty much probably use these exactly three messages to hear the message, reframe it, use your superpower, and then understand why. And I think I can see how they all linked up, and it could be used one scenario, three steps of how you deal with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And is that how that was that your thinking behind when you were giving me these messages?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I went through that process of thinking, well, I've got these three things, but definitely they were all part of my the reason for, I suppose, my reaction to it. It was also, if I'm honest, prompted by the staff in the hospital after my colonoscopy. A senior consultant, you know, when they found the tumor, a senior consultant came rushing in, and she was very pragmatic, so kind but very pragmatic, and she just said, look, you just need to tackle this like you tackled the Atlantic. Use the same determination and positivity, and you'll get through it. And she was so right. I mean, I think I would have done it anyway, but she was so right. And then when I was in recovery after the procedure, a nurse saw my painted toenails, and I painted my nails because that evening I was due to go into London for the awards presentation for the Row. And she said, oh, why have you got such nice toenails? So I told her, but I said, I suppose I won't be going now, in a rather meek tone. She said, no, she said, nothing physically has changed since you walked through the door this morning. So go and enjoy the celebrations, and you'll deal with this another day. And I thought, she's so right. It doesn't, yes, it might change things in future for me, and it might stop me doing some things in the future, but it doesn't need to stop me doing this thing tonight. So yeah, hours after the diagnosis, I put my glad rags on and off I went into London and celebrated alongside the rest of the crew. And it was probably the best thing to do in that situation, because there's nothing I could have done to change the outcome at that point. But I would have begrudged it had I not been able to do that.
That's incredibly tough.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say as if I know, but I can imagine loads of people would succumb to it and go home and, you know, think this is it and feel horrible. And yeah, it's a tough news to receive for anyone. And the fact that you just went, you know what, I'm going, and there's nothing I can do right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think had it been a different event, I might not have made that decision, but it was literally a once in a lifetime opportunity. I couldn't have done that thing another week or another night. It was that night or never. And actually, if I hadn't gone, I would have had to explain why I wasn't there. And I probably wasn't ready at that point to explain. I told my sister, but otherwise, nobody else knew. And that was the best way for me at that point
to cope with it and to digest it internally first. Yeah, because you it's a shock.
It's a shock, and also at that point, I didn't know what the prognosis was. I didn't know if I didn't know what stage it was. I knew that it was a big tumor, but I didn't know whether I had secondaries elsewhere, and I didn't know if it was curable or not. And until I knew that, I didn't want to tell people, because then you're opening out all sorts of questions, especially, for my parents. And so it was the right thing not to tell lots of people at that point until I had more answers for them.
And how do you think, so I'm really curious. I want to know now, when you found out this is the treatment, this is I don't know how long it was between then and then to realize that, and when doctor said it's stage 3 and this is what you're going to have to do. What was your mind telling you then?
I think that the hardest part of it all was there were 5 days between being told I had cancer and then finding out that from the scans there weren't any visible signs of secondaries. So at that point, it seemed very likely it would be a curable treatment plan, and that obviously made a huge difference because those 5 days were really hard because it was hard not to let those what if scenarios creep in and how am I going to tell my parents? How are we going to tell the children? At least after 5 days, I kind of knew what we were grappling with, and that surgery would be the next stage of treatment. And surgery was 3 weeks later. And then it was just I suppose it's like how you tackle any challenge. It was about breaking it down into chunks and manageable bite-sized pieces. So it was about getting through the surgery. And then it was about, recovering from the surgery. And it was about 2 weeks after surgery that I found out that it was stage 3 and that I'd need chemo. And so then it was about getting through the first round of chemo and then each round of chemo thereafter and making sure that my blood's recovered enough. So it was really very much, if you think about work situations and big projects, it's very much about breaking this other thing down into bite-sized chunks and getting through each stage as best I could using these mindset superpowers.
And did you stick to exercising and you just retained your usual routine?
Yeah.
That's important, I think.
Yeah. I think it was important physically to keep fit because obviously the stronger you are in yourself, in your body, the more chance you have of kind of, battling the cancer and then withstanding the effects of the chemo. But probably more so for me, it was a psychological thing because I ran as much as I possibly could during that period. And I was doing a lot of walking after the surgery when I couldn't run. And I remember thinking, oh, if I can still do this, if my body's still strong enough to do this, then I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through it. And so, as much as it was helping my body physically, it was also a massive strength mentally, and keeping me very much mentally strong.
You are incredible, Felicity, because you had a hip replacement just probably 2 years,
Yeah.
just 2 years ago. Then you were hit with the cancer, but you also did the row in between, and in your life it feels like a roller coaster.
Yeah. I describe the last few years as a roller coaster.
Really.
Yeah. Highs and lows.
And it feels like now you're on a slowing down pace and you're looking for another roller coaster perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, well, absolutely. It's, changing career and doing a career pivot is another challenge. But I think I've got the confidence to do it because of what I've been through. And so almost going through those challenges and realizing that you can come out the other side has given me that appreciation of my superpower and confidence and self-value and everything else to do something different.
And for your children, how, may I ask, how you communicated the news, and how I guess it's not how they support it, it's almost like how did you support them for them to understand what's happening?
From a cancer perspective, that was really difficult because my dad had cancer at the time as well. He had quite advanced stage 4 kidney cancer, and my children knew that Popper, they called him Popper, my children knew that Popper had cancer, and that he wasn't going to get better from it. And so it was really hard telling them that I have cancer without them jumping to conclusions, without them thinking that I was going to die from it. And so Paul and I talked about how we were going to tell them, and we were very very conscious that we wanted them to know the truth. We definitely didn't want them to hear it from somebody else, but we didn't want to frighten them. And so we kind of tried to keep it fairly light when we told them. They'd remembered me going into hospital for my hip replacement, so the notion of me going into hospital for an operation wasn't an alien concept to them. And we said, look, mummy's got to go into hospital to have an operation on my tummy. I'll be in hospital for a few days and then I'll be home again. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, can we go and watch telly again now? And at that point we thought, well, we can't now bring them back and tell them, no, it's really serious. So we let it go at that point. And then when I knew I was going to have chemo, we then had to say, well, look, now need to have some more treatment. And, it's what I've got is cancer. And, that Pop has got cancer. And we had to then try and separate the two things and explain that there are lots of different types of cancer. And some people get better and some people don't. And I'm going to get better from mine. And they took it really, really well. I think it's difficult to know actually how they're processing it internally. And I think they probably have all processed it differently. My middle one probably was the more emotional of the three. And I think that came out further down the line in terms of being a little bit more clingy with me, a little bit more emotionally up and down. I think Grace, my youngest, was probably a little too young to understand. But for her, the fact that I was still around, still running about, still able to play with her, that was all that mattered really. And I'm not quite sure how my elder one took it. He seemed to be very level-headed about it, but whether it comes out later at some other point in time further down the line, we'll see. But I think, the best thing for them, for me to be able to do, is to carry on as much as possible as normal. And so that they didn't get frightened by seeing me, lying in bed, unable to move, all those kind of things. And that was what I was very conscious of.
Thank you so much for sharing this, and it's quite private perhaps as well, but I was really curious because I think my 5-year-old might take it differently because he may not understand, but the bit older kids, it's another pressure on you to explain it so you don't affect them. There's that no trauma and a certain kind of anxiety around it, and that if something happens to them one day in their life, you're like, you know what, my mom took it this way, and I look up to her, and it's almost like you still behaving like inspirational person to them.
Yeah. And I think as parents, you've really got to find the right way of telling your children, and it will very much depend on the age. And when the news of Kate and Will came out, that really resonated with me because her children are very similar ages. Hers just happened a couple of years later, but I totally felt for them that they had to find the right time and the right place to tell their children, and yet they had to do it in very much in the public eye, and that must have been so hard.
Thank you so much, Felicity, for sharing this. What I've been doing in the background. I know
It looks amazing.
And slightly watching, but it doesn't have to be a long process because we are talking. You can do it much quicker, but it is simple rule.
Yeah.
I put butter, flour, you mix it so the little lumps of the flour came out. I don't know how much you cook, but I'm just explaining it all anyway. And then I start pouring chicken stock in there. Just slowly pour it all in, and there was a tiny bit of white wine. I used Chardonnay. That is evaporated now as well, so suitable for kids, nevertheless. And you want the consistency. I don't know if you see. It's almost like a maple syrup, I say. It's kind of thick and yeah, exactly. And so you don't want it to be too runny, but you don't want it to be so thick as well. So I think this is almost the right consistency. And what I've got here is making noises. I've got mashed potato that I made earlier. I'm just simply going to add a little bit of milk, which I didn't add earlier, just to soften up a bit. And I've got some butter. So it's not loads of blocks of butter. Yeah, I'm actually okay with fat as putting in my diet. For me, I absorb fats really well. So if for example, some people don't absorb fat really well. Some people carbs. For me, carbs. As soon as I eat carbs, that's it. I don't feel really good. I gain weight quicker. But if I eat fat, it's absolutely fine. So it depends how people are. But mashed potato needs to have some butter. So you are here like in the restaurant indulging. You're not here for a diet, Felicity. And I guess bringing the subject again, your diet as well was really important during the treatment, because I remember my husband had to change his diet, not for like the better, but to eat actually loads of strange things that he didn't used to eat. So he had to eat to gain weight. And you probably lost weight as well during the treatment.
I probably lost a bit of weight. I didn't lose a huge amount, but after surgery, you have to eat all of the foods that you're taught are terrible for you. So nothing with any fiber, white bread, white this, white the other, anything jelly, anything that's bland and seemingly low in nutritious content, you have to eat. And that was really hard to get my head around. You weren't allowed anything fibrous, no green leafy vegetables, which are so good for you. So it was almost counterintuitive. You need to get better, but you're not allowed to put food into your body that's going to help the process.
Yes. And I remember I really struggled with that.
Yeah.
Because it just went against everything I know.
Yeah.
And he had to put on weight as well. And so I tried to incorporate various vitamins and things like that. But it was really hard to stick to white bread and really just really boring kind of, no, not enough greens kind of calories and foods. And yeah, so I guess that was a punishment, probably bigger punishment.
It was, because I do eat healthily most of the time. I mean, everyone has their vices, don't they, and the odd relapse. But I enjoy eating healthily, and so it was very strange to be enforced to eat what I consider not healthy stuff. But actually, I got back to normal pretty quickly.
Because you are Felicity with your superpowers.
Yeah.
I'm going to take your plate.
Thank you very much.
And I've got beans here, so I steamed them.
Lovely.
With a bit of olive oil and salt. And then we're going to put mashed potatoes for you. So what do you think, Felicity? Will this be done at home? If you taste it as well and you like it.
I think so, yeah. I wouldn't do the mashed potato at home because for some reason my kids have developed an aversion to mashed potato. Yeah. They'll eat other forms of potato, just not mashed. I know, it's strange. Most children like it, not mine.
Actually, no, my son doesn't like mashed potato as well. Yeah, for some strange reason. But he likes potatoes separately, but not mashed potato.
Yeah, but I don't mind because it's more hassle than other forms of potato generally, isn't it? So that's okay.
Yes, and obviously it involves loads of other things like butter in there. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your story, for being so open. Incredible story, Felicity, and your tough as nails story may go on and inspire others. And I really appreciate having you here. And hopefully you will be enjoying my meal.
Well, I appreciate being cooked for. It doesn't happen often.
Well, there you go. You had a little treat. So we got freaking chicken francese for Felicity.
Lovely.
There you go.
Very much. Delicious.
Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. I hope you will take away some of these messages about reframing, understanding your why, or finding your superpower. Just have a little think in terms of what are you really good at and what you could share to the world and make it your superpower. Thank you for being here, Felicity. Hope you enjoyed this.
I'm sure I will.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.